And good morning, good evening, good night, wherever you are in podcast land. Brendan Cunningham, the real estate doctor here at EXP. And I have Matt Paul, and he's remote, and I'm remote, and so are you. We're all over the place. We're all over the world. And we're going to talk about things that you need to know about real estate, whether you want them or not. We always give you the real story because we are the real realtors. There's Matt Paul. He does it all. He's going to fill in all the blanks that I'm going to leave, I'm sure. All right.
Hopefully
And
not.
you just reminded me, buddy. What is it? It's
Yes, it's April showers.
April shower. It's nice and sunny right now. It's also
Yep.
April 15th. So if you didn't pay your taxes, you got to do that. You got to pay your
Yep.
dues if you want to sing the blues. The good news
That
is,
or get the extension.
or get the extension. The good news is, actually, with the Donald Trump thing, I saved a few bucks this year. So
Excellent.
that's good. But yeah,
Good.
you got to do what you got to do. But
Yep.
April, for those of us that are not in the business, and I wouldn't know this, it's Fair Housing Month. And you know what? Fair housing, it really shouldn't be something that we celebrate just once a month. It's a thing that's all year round. It's all lifetime around. And what's interesting is how it's evolved over the years. And in fact, I was at a fair housing seminar this morning that was absolutely outstanding. And I have to tell you, in truth, a lot of times we do them because they're sort of get-tos as opposed to got-tos. You know, we gotta go to the fair housing seminar every this was when, that you really, if you were fortunate enough to be there, you got to go to this one. You get to go to a good one. And it was a panel discussion. They had a couple of attorneys come in from varying states and talk about what we do. But it's an important thing. And let's be frank and say that, we haven't always done the best job, and one of the people that was a spokesperson there today is the executive vice president of the association. Um, and he talked about, when he grew up in East New York City. I grew up in New York City, and those were areas that were severely hampered by very unfair housing practices historically.
Yeah,
I
there's
mean,
a reason why it's in place, right?
yeah, and there's a reason why they have these laws, and the banks weren't always nice people about this. And in fact, there was something that some of the newer agents probably don't even know what it is, but it was something called redlining. Redlining was a terrible thing where, I mean, you could literally he showed a map of New York City and all the areas that were redlined. What did that mean? It meant that banks wouldn't lend money to people in certain areas. That's not cool. I mean, that's
No.
really not cool. And it was just normal policy and nobody thought anything of it. And, I mean, it was bad. It was a really bad thing. So thank God that that's gone. It's fair housing has continued to evolve over the years, and more people have become what they fall under protected statuses. Gender is certainly one. Family status. There's about 18 different categories now, other than just race, creed, color, and national origin. And and the laws that are in place are good laws. I mean, because they're designed to give everyone a fair shake and get a better opportunity at actually acquiring not just a place to live, but something that goes to generational wealth, you know? And,
Yep. Home
you know,
ownership.
Matt, you and I have probably just taken it for granted over the years, but yeah, it's a thing. I mean, and I don't know if you've run into any issues with fair housing over the years, but I certainly have, and I've seen things, and some of the
Absolutely.
things that we're talking about were really funny. It's like, yeah, well, like with the animals, I mean, there's a lot of laws on the books about service animals. They're not pets. They don't
No,
fall under the pet policy. A service
they
animal is
fall under
not.
like a wheelchair,
Yes,
you know? Yep.
they're like a person. You can't discriminate against them. Right? It's a service animal. You can't ask questions about them. Now, then you get into the thing about the support animals. Yeah, you can ask a couple of questions about that, and there are some distinctions that, thank God, have been made, and they have brought in some common sense notions. Because you remember when people were flying on planes and they were bringing their support, the support peacock. Do you remember the support
Yeah.
peacock? I mean, it was insane. It's
Yep.
crazy. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, you can't be doing stuff like that anymore, and but one of the things that was funny is the only animals I bet you didn't know this, if it's a service animal, like we think, um, the
Yeah, seeing
blind
eye
dog,
dog.
the seeing eye dogs, and
Yep.
they're wonderful. Those things cost about $20,000 a pop, by the way, because they gotta get special training. I mean, they're smarter
Wow.
than we are. They're brilliant.
Yeah.
I used to work with the Lions Association, and we used to fund the dogs, and it was just crazy. Everyone always wanted to get one of the reject dogs, that were really smart, but they just couldn't cut the grade, and they were the best
Yep.
dogs you could get, but yeah,
Yeah.
those
Highly
were like,
trained.
oh my god, they were brilliant. I mean, I used this kid. I had one guy in the Lions Club. I used to have to drive him around, and he'd bring the dog with him and sit in the back there. I mean, this dog, I think he could do PowerPoint and Microsoft Word. It was brilliant. Didn't do much with Excel, but it didn't need it.
Yeah. It's quicker on the
But
computer than you.
but there under the service animal thing, there's only 2 animals that meet the requirement. What do you know what they
Really?
are? Yeah.
Well, dog has to be it, right?
Dog is one, what's the other?
Would
Cat?
it be a cat?
No, it's not, 'cause cats don't you
Really?
can't train a cat, right? This is
Yeah,
funny.
that's true.
Miniature horse. 'Cause you
Really?
can train them, evidently, and I don't know what you train them for, but you can train them, and they are the only other animal that you can register as a service animal. Now, I gotta tell you, I don't know if I'd be crazy about somebody bringing a miniature horse as a mess, but I guess they get potty trained. I don't know.
Well, that's it. Yeah. Could it actually live inside?
Yeah.
You can domesticate a horse? Okay.
Yeah, miniature horse.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow. I
and
did
they're
not
really
know
cute.
that.
Miniature horses are not big. I mean, they're probably smaller than German shepherds.
Okay.
They're really tiny, and in fact, there was a donkey farm out in Holland. I used to love to just drive by and see them because they had miniature donkeys, and the name of the
Cool.
farm was Half Ass Farm. Is that great? It was great. Yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Yeah.
so they have tightened some of the regulations on some of the, what do they call them, the emotional animals.
Yeah. Emotional support, right?
There was a big like, I don't wanna call it a scandal, but it was a big issue and they mentioned it, up in Amherst, because somebody had, an emotional support potbelly pig, okay? Now, I don't know if do you know about potbelly pigs?
I know
Do you
they're
know how they work?
messy.
Well, they're
Yeah.
messy. Well,
Now
a lot of people think that they don't get big. If you don't feed there's a myth, you don't feed them, they don't get big, and when they're little piglets, they're tiny, they're like little puppies. But, yeah, as a rule, they tend to get big when you feed them, and they get to be like 200 pounds. Well,
boy.
so there was a emotional support pig in Amherst, and it got loose because somebody left the door open. So the pig was running all over the neighborhood, and it was like a violation, because you're not allowed to have farm animals up in there. It was a whole big mishigash. So the farm
Wow.
animal thing was getting trumped by the service animal thing. It was really actually a very, very funny story. And then as it turns
When
out,
did this take place?
oh, yeah, I don't remember the years, but it was a while ago. But everyone was talking about it, everyone was laughing about it, and they said, well, as it turns out, they weren't the only ones that had it. There was another person that had a potbelly pig. So they said, well, which pig is it? No, I mean,
Wow.
sometimes these are funny things that we have to deal with, but there's still things we have to deal with, and so does the
Yeah.
consumer. It's
Yep.
like, if you're trying to rent your apartment or something, you need to know about these things. You need to know about these laws and what you can say and what you can't say. Like with the service animal thing, you're not allowed to even ask a question about it. If it's a service animal, it's a service animal.
Okay. Wow, even if you have a no pet policy.
Nope, it's not a pet. It's
Yep.
not a pet, yeah. And actually,
Wow.
there are actually 2 questions. It is a service animal? You can say it's a ser and the service that it provides for you is what? You can say that. That's all you can say. Um,
Okay.
and they'll say,
Wow.
"Well, and it's usually pretty apparent, so you wouldn't have to ask if the guy's in a wheelchair or whatever. Um, and the service animals have really come a long way. It's not just for blind people, it's for people that can't hear, And then there's some that can tell when you haven't taken your medication. These animals are brilliant, man. I mean, they're brilliant. Like if you're diabetic and you haven't taken your, if you go into shock, they know, and they tell people, and yeah. So that was actually it was amusing, but it was also important that we know about these things, and look, because the laws change, and they do
Yeah, they're
make
constantly
adjustments, and
changing.
they make
Yep,
adjustments, but sometimes
yep.
they don't make adjustments. Was one of the things that was interesting was they talked about um, the first they showed a movie, and the girl talked about that she was Irish Catholic, and she talked about how the Irish were discriminated against when they first came over. And they were terribly discriminated against, as were the Italians. And so I think just about every group that came here was discriminated. But to this day, to this day, in New York City leases, and I have to double check this, but as of last time I looked at it was about a year ago, they had words in the New York City leases that said that the cooking of cabbage or carp or other noxious foods is strictly prohibited. That
Really?
that was to discriminate against Irish.
Yeah.
Yeah, can't do
Wow.
that anymore. But I
No,
think the
no.
words might still be there, and they've kinda lost impact, you know? Um, but, yes, c and somebody raised another issue. Can you say, just 'cause some things you seem like common sense, but they're fair housing violations. On the words that you use. And in New York State, we don't have a consistent dictionary of the words that we can and can't use. There's some suggestions and there's guidelines, but the spokesperson, who I think was from Maryland, she says, "Oh yeah, Maryland has a dictionary that they give you for the words that you can use and the words that you can't use." And some of them, like one of the words was, um, it was a broker in Ellicottville was talking about, well, sometimes you can advertise that, people wanna know how close is it to town? Is it
Mhm.
walkable?
Yeah,
And, I mean, that would be a selling point, one would think. They said, "Well, you gotta be careful because you don't wanna be accused of discriminating against people that can't walk."
yeah,
Wow. It's like,
yeah.
I mean, you have to think about those things, and,
You'd
um,
have to put it in terms of miles then, just
it
distance
yeah,
and
you have
leave
to
out.
be very, very general and neutral, and sometimes it's a little counterintuitive, and sometimes you say, "Well, yeah, but I need to know this."
Mhm.
Um, yeah, sometimes the laws do they go too far? I think that they sometimes trip over themselves a little bit, just a little bit. Um, I mean, I know there was a very what popular one in New York City years ago that said convenient to worship, and that's really one of those troublesome terms because what does it mean? What it really meant was that it was in an Orthodox Jewish neighborhood because you need to be able to walk to the synagogue on Sabbath. You can't drive, you can't take a bus. So that would be important for that person, but by implying that, it limits it to people that aren't necessarily Orthodox Jewish, and so it
The demographic
it
that's
it
going to the
it
synagogue. Yep.
becomes a problem sometimes, but,
Yeah, I've seen that
I
too with the familia status, when people
familiar
say
status,
like a
yeah,
family
yeah.
like family neighborhood, things
Yeah,
like
family
that. We're
neighbor,
lots
can't
of
do
Jewish
that,
neighborhood.
okay? Because I could
No.
be a family of 1, you know?
Yep. Yep.
I'm a bachelor, I'm a family of 1, I mean, well, yeah, so
Yeah.
yeah, so but you and the laws, they evolve and they change, um, and we have to stay up on this stuff, but so does the consumer, and I think lots of times people go to their realtors because they're relying on them to keep them in out of harm's way too. We all wanna do the
Absolutely.
right thing, but
Yeah,
sometimes
of course.
and we talked a little bit about this a couple of weeks ago about like schools.
Mhm.
We can tell you what are the best schools, but if we do, are we steering you? And that's the problem here. So we have to insulate ourselves and say, you know what? Here's the list of schools, and we're fortunate because all the schools, the majority of the school systems are really, really good. But somebody may be looking for like a school that has, special um, a better
Yep.
special ed program, and
Yeah.
and
Or
uh, and
sports,
or sports or something like that. And
Yep.
and you
Yep.
and you'll have to maybe we got to be careful on how we supply that information.
Did you hear anything that has anything been brought up about senior living areas,
You know
55 and
what? That's a
older?
whole other thing, and we didn't touch on that at all, and we probably could have spent, 2 hours at least talking about it, but it's not something that's as common in our area as, like, you go to Florida. Everything's a
Yeah.
55 community down there. I mean, I shouldn't say, but you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying. I mean,
Yeah.
uh, and actually, it should be more of an issue here because we have more senior citizens here per capita than they do in St. Petersburg, you know?
Wow.
And that's where there's a lot of old
Yeah.
people, and I guess
Yeah.
because I'm one of the old people, I know about this, you know? I used
Yeah.
to joke when
I did hear that.
they used to call
What's
St.
that?
Petersburg God's waiting room.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, we
I
do have
heard
a
that
yeah.
in Cheektowaga, I heard that the demographic, there's more older people in Cheektowaga than there are in Lauderdale.
Yes, I heard
And,
that statistic as well. And, you don't
yep.
think about those things, you think
No,
Cheektowaga,
no.
airport, malls, and graveyards.
Well, and to carry on that, somebody was, expressing what's the need of 5 different districts within that town, and, it's the tax burden on the seniors, and
Yeah.
if they're not going to school, their kids are well out of school, it's just a burden to them, so that's where, the conversation was coming from, I believe.
Yeah, and one of the things that's to do with the aging thing is when they passed way back when they passed the transfer tax on mortgages, the extra $5 in Erie County, um, they just said, "Well, who's gonna pay for this? Because 'Cause we've gotta pay for this train that doesn't go anywhere." They said, "Well, we'll just slap it on real estate transactions." But one of the things they did was, sometimes they just don't think things through. They said, "But you know what? We're gonna make sure that this doesn't affect the old people, so if you're over 65, you don't have to pay the $5 per thousand. Well, there's a lot of old
Hmm,
people that eliminated. So,
yeah,
they took one step forward and two steps backwards because they didn't collect all the taxes that they needed. So that's why they're
yeah,
raising the taxes in the city of Buffalo now to catch up,
yep,
you know?
yep,
Um,
yep,
so
and well,
yeah,
God
so
forbid you cut back a little bit here and there.
yeah. So, but yeah, fair housing is an important thing, and they've passed a number of laws, and they continue to pass the laws, and it evolves. We have a
Yeah,
very
I mean,
dynamic society, and and
it
sometimes the
seems
laws
like every year there's another protected class too,
it
when I
does,
mean,
and
10 years
sometimes
ago, there was 7.
yeah, no, I think it's 19, I think 17.
Yeah.
I've lost track, and it's like it's what it is, but
Yep.
they're all good, and you know what? The vast majority are absolute common sense, and if
Yeah.
there's one takeaway from the seminar this morning was the word consistency. You just have to be consistent. You treat everyone the same, and you should be fine. You should just be fine. Treat everyone the same. Treat them the way you want to be treated, and but you should have a consistent uh, book of procedure. You know, don't be winging it. I think it makes us better professionals, and the fair housing thing particularly makes us better professionals because you really can't wing that. You gotta kind of know what the rules and the guidelines are. You know,
Yep.
and what you can
Absolutely.
say, what you can't say, uh, and just because it's common sense may not be appropriate.
Yep. Yep. I
Yeah,
agree.
yeah,
Times are
yeah.
changing.
Yeah, and one of the more experienced agents was talking about somebody on his team was just cited for something because they didn't say what they said, but they said it was totally innocent, and the person took offense to it, and they made a complaint. And we don't know what it was, but they said if we told you what it was, you'd just be shaking your head. It's like what? But
Were
that
they
doesn't make any
fined?
well. They're still playing with it. I think it's under appeal right now. So,
Well,
because the 2 people think it was common sense, and so it was like, "Well, come on, man, cut me some slack here. This is pretty dumb." But, uh,
yeah.
but either way, if you make a complaint, you make a complaint, you know?
Yeah. You
And
get serious.
yeah, and the Department of State complaints are very serious because one of the things that I guess some people would intuitively know about us is as professionals, like doctors and lawyers, they have they have malpractice insurance. We have errors and omissions insurance. And the good news is I've never had to use errors and omissions insurance in 45 years, but I have it. And I don't know anyone that I've worked with that's ever had to use it, which is also good.
Yeah.
But Here's
Absolutely.
the problem with errors and omissions insurance. It only covers an agent for errors and omissions. It doesn't cover you for crimes or
Mhm.
violations of law. So if God forbid you have some sort of a fair housing issue, the fines can be substantial. I
Big
mean,
time, yeah.
and not just losing your license or being sanctioned or suspended. They can give you big monetary damages, and
Yeah.
they're not those. That's on you, and the broker
Yep.
doesn't share them with you. That's you're taking
No,
out your trusty little checkbook or your. I don't think they take Venmo, but you're
no,
writing a
and I
check.
heard, I mean, they start at, like, 5,000 pretty much. I mean, so
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
paying
The
thousands.
fines are nuts because they don't want you to
Yep,
do it.
yep.
They figure, and unlike some of our criminal laws, I can remember when I was a psychology major in college, they they talked about punishment as a deterrent to crime, and what they said was it really didn't matter what the severity of the punishment was, it was the certainty of the punishment. And
Mhm.
you kill somebody today, you could be on death row for the rest of your life. Even though you said, that they're gonna give you the chair, whatever, and you could just go on for an hour and a So, I don't know that that acts as much of as a deterrent, but in fair housing things, let me tell you, if they fine you, you're gonna pay it, and they're gonna be on you like a duck on a June bug, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah,
They don't mess
you're
around.
gonna be constantly watched.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Better
It's like
off
when you
not
get the
doing
letter
it.
from the IRS, everything stops, it's like,
Yeah,
this guy no, this can't be good. I don't
it's
think I'm gonna
never
be
a
able
good
to talk my
feeling.
way I'm not gonna be able to talk my way out of this one.
No. Absolutely not. Nope. Well, I'm glad you went to that fair housing, seminar, and thanks for
We'll
bringing
talk
all
more
that
about it.
info for
Yeah.
us. That's
And
great.
actually, I'm going to use some of the information on a more concerted basis. I'm teaching a class on Friday, selling real estate in volatile times, and there's a lot of overlap from the fair housing class that I took to what I'm going to be talking about because they do fit in, and it has to do with that consistency thing. You really want to be consistent with everything you do. You do that, and chances are you're going to be fine, you know,
Yep.
and not
Yep.
fined. You could be
Yep.
fined without being fined, but yeah, our business is a wonderful profession when you do it the right way, and consumers love us when we do it the right way. And I always tell agents, if you did a good job when the client gives you a present,
Yeah.
and above and beyond the
Agreed.
thank you.
Yes,
And I've been very
absolutely.
fortunate. I've gotten lots of presents over the years, and I buy presents too. But
Well, you're
yeah,
good.
so those are some of the things going on. Mortgage rates are still whatever, right?
Yeah, they're right around 6.5. They went up a little bit since the war, but still, well below the average of 8%.
Yeah. Still seeing multiple offers like crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, we're still, I saw quite a bit more listings hit the market this week than, up since the beginning of the year. So
You
it
know
looks
what I
like we
did?
are
I
getting
I
to a
just driving around, I even saw more signs, which is
Yep.
fun, you know?
Yeah. No, we need inventory.
But, everyone talks that we mentioned it a couple times about the affordable housing things, and it's getting to be like the weather at this point. Everyone's talking about it, but no one can do a lot about it at this point.
No, no.
That's what it is.
Time will tell. See how it
Time
shakes
will
out.
tell. Indeed. So, we have some interesting guests coming up in the next couple of weeks,
Yes.
and, there's all kinds of other interesting things happening in the real estate market that we wanna share with you, and if you have questions, give us a call, write it s what do you subscribe, all that stuff that
Please
you say?
like, follow, subscribe, comment on
Come on, yeah, say,
our
"Listen, what do you
videos.
think about this, you dope? Come on, tell me,
Yeah.
I wanna know about this." And we address those questions.
Yep,
Yeah,
absolutely. Well,
okay.
thank you for tuning in.
Okay, and all that stuff. Say it again. I love when you do that.
All right.
Like,
Please
subscribe.
like, follow, subscribe.
Yeah, like Matt says, and together, remember, we are
We are
the
the
real estate
real
guys.
estate guys. All right. It's stopping.